In 1965, Singapore was expelled from Malaysia, a poor, resourceless island with no army and slums everywhere. Just 30 years later, it became richer than its former colonizer, Britain. This is the untold story of the Singapore miracle, where strict laws, forced savings, and one leader's ruthless vision built a first-world paradise, at a hidden cost. From struggle to strength, the rise of Singapore. In the shadow of colonial legacy and surrounded by stronger neighbors, 1960s Singapore was fragile. An island stripped of resources, its people burdened by poverty, its future uncertain. With a GDP per capita below $320, few believed it could survive, let alone thrive. But against the odds, Singapore defied its fate. Through sheer will, bold leadership, and a relentless belief in education, trade, and open markets, it clawed its way up the global ladder. Today, with a GDP per capita soaring above $60,000, Singapore stands not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of transformation, a nation that turned its scarcity into strength and its vulnerability into victory. Cast out to rise alone, Singapore's fight for survival. For over a century, Singapore bore the weight of British rule, until war shattered the illusion of protection, igniting a fire for freedom. In 1963, it joined Malaysia in hopeful union, but that dream soured quickly. Ethnic tensions flared, riots scorched the streets, and mistrust festered. In a stunning turn, Malaysia expelled Singapore like an unwanted limb, forcing it into reluctant independence on August 9, 1965. The young nation was vulnerable, surrounded by hostile neighbors, drowning in poverty, riddled with slums, and abandoned by potential allies. Yet in that moment of crisis, Singapore's true journey began, not as a chosen power, but as a forsaken underdog, determined to build its destiny with bare hands and unyielding will. Leaping over walls, Singapore's bold gamble with the world. In the shadow of a crumbling colonial past, Singapore's old lifeline, entrepot trade, was no longer enough. With the British gone and unemployment surging, the young nation stood on the brink of despair. Lacking factories, industrial know-how, and even willing neighbors to trade with, Singapore seemed cornered. But instead of folding, its leaders looked outward, inspired by nations like Israel that defied their isolation. Kuan Yew and his team made a radical bet. They would court the world's giants, multinational corporations, and invite them to build a future on this tiny island. It was a leap into the unknown, driven not by choice but by sheer necessity. And it would change Singapore forever. The iron hand behind the miracle. To turn Singapore into a haven for global investors, its leaders knew stability had to be absolute, even if it came at the cost of personal freedoms. Under Kuan Yew's iron-fisted vision, the government centralized control, crushing corruption with harsh penalties and streamlining labor under a single, obedient trade union. Dissent was silenced swiftly, often without trial. It was a cold, calculated gamble. Trade liberty for order, and with it, the trust of multinational corporations. In a region marred by chaos and coups, Singapore emerged as an island of unshakable discipline, harsh but safe, rigid but reliable, and for global business that made all the difference. From sweat to silicon. In just 7 years, Singapore transformed from a struggling island to a magnet for global capital. By 1972, foreign investors, particularly from the United States and Japan, had poured into its industrial sector, drawn by the city-state's unrivaled stability and investor-friendly policies. But Singapore didn't stop at building factories, it built people. The government, with calculated urgency, paid global giants to train its citizens, turning a workforce once unskilled in manufacturing into a rising class of engineers, technicians, and researchers. What began with sewing machines and circuit boards evolved into high-tech marvels, from biotech labs to aerospace design. Singapore wasn't just open for business, it was becoming the business, the empire of efficiency. From a fragile post-colonial state to a juggernaut of global commerce, Singapore has carved out a market economy as precise and deliberate as its skyline. What began as survival has become mastery. Its once modest port now leads the world, moving more goods than nearly any other place on Earth. Tourists pour in by the millions, lured by luxury, nature, and innovation, from glittering casinos to lush safaris. Banking vaults overflow, filled with wealth shifted from aging financial havens to Singapore's secure and discreet embrace. Biotech giants and oil titans alike have laid roots here, drawn to the country's calculated mix of stability, skill, and statecraft. In every sector, Singapore doesn't just participate, it dominates, proof that vision and discipline can rewrite destiny. The price of progress. In a world where size often defines power, Singapore defies the rule with quiet intensity. Barely a dot on the map, it now stands as the 15th largest trading partner of the United States and a hub for over 3,000 multinational corporations. With only 433 square miles and a labor force of 3 million, this city-state generates a GDP north of $300 billion, a feat many larger nations can only dream of. Life here is long and orderly, with one of the highest life expectancies on Earth. But this miracle of efficiency and prosperity comes with a cost: personal freedoms traded for ironclad stability. It's a model both praised and condemned, yet the results are indisputable. Singapore chose control, and in return, it built an empire from almost nothing. Singapore's miracle proves that development isn't about luck, it's about choices. Which other nations' rise should we explore next? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, help us share more history lessons. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more from History Love.